The scorching Texas sun beat down on Kathleen Sinclair as she clutched the envelope in her trembling hands, the paper damp with her nervous perspiration. The year was 1875, and at 20 years old, she was about to marry a man she barely knew. "You're shaking like a leaf in a tornado, Kathleen," said Preston Winthrop, her fiancé of 3 months, his voice carrying across the dusty porch of the Sinclair family ranch. "It's only a marriage certificate, not a death warrant." His wealthy friends chuckled at his remark, their fine suits and polished boots marking them as outsiders in the rugged frontier town of Redemption Creek. Kathleen's cheeks burned with humiliation. It wasn't just the marriage certificate causing her distress, but everything it represented. Her family's ranch was failing, cattle dying from drought and debts piling higher than the nearby mountains. Preston's railroad money would save them all, but at what cost to her? "Some women aren't meant for frontier life," Preston continued, adjusting his expensive waistcoat. "Perhaps we should have met in Boston instead. The ladies there have stronger constitutions for simple matters." Another round of laughter erupted from his companions. Kathleen bit her lip, fighting back tears. Her parents had already gone inside. Too grateful for the financial salvation, Preston offered to notice how he spoke to their daughter. "Reckon a man ought to know the difference between nerves and good sense." The deep voice cut through the mockery like a knife. Kathleen turned to see a tall figure leaning against the porch railing, partially obscured by shadow. He stepped forward, and her breath caught. He wore the practical clothes of a working cowboy, worn leather chaps over denim pants, a simple cotton shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing sun-bronzed forearms. His face was weathered but handsome, with intelligent blue eyes beneath the brim of a dusty hat. "Forrest Irwin," he introduced himself with a slight tip of his hat. "Just hired on as foreman for the Sinclair ranch." His eyes met Kathleen's. "Miss Sinclair's got every right to consider her choices carefully, shows she's got more sense than most." Preston's face darkened. "This doesn't concern you, cowhand. Know your place." Forrest's expression remained impassive. "Just offering an observation. A nervous bride might be thinking clearly, while a mocking groom might be showing his true nature." He turned to Kathleen, his gaze softening. "For what it's worth, Miss Sinclair, she's brave enough for me." With those words hanging in the air, he nodded respectfully and walked toward the stables, leaving Kathleen's heart racing for reasons that had nothing to do with her impending marriage. That evening, Kathleen sat at her bedroom window, watching the sunset paint the landscape in shades of gold and crimson. Her mother entered without knocking, carrying Kathleen's freshly pressed wedding dress. "You should be grateful, Kathleen," Margaret Sinclair said, hanging the dress on the wardrobe door. "Preston is a good match. His railroad connections will bring prosperity back to our land." Kathleen sighed. "But is that worth a lifetime of unhappiness, Mother? You've heard how he speaks to me." Her mother's face softened momentarily before hardening again. "Men like Preston aren't marrying for love. They want suitable wives who understand their position. Your father and I didn't love each other when we married, but we built something meaningful. And if I want more than that, more." Her mother scoffed. "Look around you, Kathleen. The drought has killed half our cattle. Your father's heart condition worsens by the day. Without Preston's money, we lose everything." She smoothed the wedding dress. "Dreams of romantic love are for storybooks, not for women with responsibilities." After her mother left, Kathleen slipped out of her room and headed toward the stables. The night air was cool against her skin as she entered the dimly lit building. The familiar smell of hay and horses comforted her. "Miss Sinclair," she startled at Forrest's voice. He stood in one of the stalls, brushing down a chestnut mare. "Mr. Irwin, I'm sorry to disturb you," he set the brush down. "No disturbance, just caring for Thunder here. She's new to the herd." Kathleen approached cautiously. "She's beautiful." "That she is." Forrest watched as Kathleen gently stroked the horse's muzzle. "Seems you have a way with animals." "I grew up riding these trails. Before my father got sick, he taught me everything about ranching." She smiled sadly. Preston thinks it unbecoming for a woman to know such things. Forrest leaned against the stall door. And what do you think, Miss Sinclair? I think. She hesitated. I think this land is in my blood. I can't imagine being anywhere else, living any other way. Then why marry a man who'd take you from it? The question hung between them, honest and unavoidable. Because my family will lose everything if I don't. Her voice cracked. The bank's threatening foreclosure. My father's medical bills keep mounting. Preston's money is our only salvation. Forrest studied her face in the lantern light. There are always other options, Miss Sinclair. Are there? She challenged. Do you know what it's like to watch everything you love crumble before your eyes? His expression darkened. More than you might think. I lost my family's ranch in Colorado to men like Preston, men who see only profit, not the lives they destroy. Kathleen's anger deflated. I'm sorry, I didn't know. No reason you should, he offered a small smile, but it's why I understand what you're facing. He hesitated before adding, and why I admire your courage. Courage, she laughed bitterly. You saw me trembling like a child today. I saw a woman honest enough to acknowledge what marriage to that man might cost her. His eyes met hers. That's not weakness, Miss Sinclair, that's bravery. Something shifted between them in that moment, a recognition, a possibility. The wedding's in 3 days, she whispered. I know. Neither said more as they stood together in the quiet stable, the future looming before them like a storm on the horizon. The next morning, Kathleen was helping her mother prepare breakfast when Preston arrived unexpectedly, 2 of his railroad associates in tow. We need to discuss the wedding arrangements, he announced, helping himself to coffee. I've decided we'll leave for Boston immediately after the ceremony. My business associates expect us there within the week. Kathleen nearly dropped the plate she was holding. Boston, but we agreed to stay here until Father's health improves. Preston waved his hand dismissively. Plans change. I have investments that need my attention. But the ranch will be managed by your father's men. That's what we're paying them for, isn't it? He glanced at her mother. Mrs. Sinclair, perhaps you could convince your daughter that a wife's place is by her husband's side. Margaret Sinclair looked torn, her eyes darting between her daughter and the man whose money they desperately needed. Kathleen, dear, perhaps Preston is right. Your father and I can manage, with all due respect, madam, Forrest interrupted from the doorway. Mr. Sinclair needs his daughter here. The doctor was clear about that. Preston turned, his expression darkening at the sight of the cowboy. I don't recall asking for your opinion, Irwin. Just reporting what the doctor said, Forrest replied calmly. Miss Sinclair's presence is good medicine for her father. Taking her away could worsen his condition. Kathleen shot Forrest a grateful look. Father needs me here, Preston. Surely your business can wait a few more weeks. Preston's jaw clenched. I didn't build my fortune by postponing important matters. He studied Kathleen's face. Perhaps I've misjudged your commitment to this marriage. Perhaps you have, she replied quietly. The tension in the room was palpable. Preston finally broke the silence with a forced laugh. Well, we'll discuss this later. In private. His pointed glare at Forrest made his meaning clear. After Preston and his associates departed for town, Kathleen found Forrest by the corral, mending a broken fence section. Thank you for speaking up, she said. He nodded, hammering a nail into place. Your father does need you. That wasn't a lie. But the doctor never said that specifically, did he? A small smile played at the corner of his mouth. Sometimes truth needs a little help making itself heard. Kathleen leaned against the fence. You don't like Preston. Don't trust him is more accurate. Forrest set his hammer down. Men like that, they see land as numbers in a ledger, not as something living. He looked across the vast expanse of the Sinclair ranch. This place deserves better than to become another railroad baron's trophy. And do I deserve better than to become his trophy wife? The words slipped out before she could stop them. Forrest met her gaze directly. Yes, Miss Sinclair, you do. That afternoon, Kathleen rode with Forrest to check on the herd. Her father had insisted she go. saying he trusted her judgment more than anyone's about the cattle's condition. It felt good to be in the saddle again, the rhythmic movement of her horse beneath her, the open sky above. "You ride well," Forrest commented as they crested a hill overlooking a small valley where several dozen cattle grazed. "My father put me on a horse before I could walk properly," she replied. "Said a Sinclair needs to be part of the land." Wise man. They dismounted near a stream to water their horses. Kathleen watched as Forrest knelt to examine tracks in the mud. "Mountain lion," he said. "Probably the one that's been picking off calves." Kathleen knelt beside him. "These tracks are fresh, from this morning." Forrest glanced at her, impressed. "You know you're tracking." Another thing Preston finds unladylike. She stood, brushing dirt from her riding skirt. "He wants me to be decorative, not useful." "And what do you want, Kathleen?" It was the first time he'd used her given name, and the sound of it in his deep voice sent an unexpected warmth through her. "I want to matter," she said simply. "I want my life to mean something beyond being someone's wife or daughter. I want to build something, protect something." She gestured to the land around them. "This place is part of me, the thought of leaving it." "Then don't," he said. Their eyes met, and for a moment Kathleen could see a future different from the one she'd resigned herself to. But reality quickly reasserted itself. "You make it sound so simple." "It's not simple," he acknowledged. "But sometimes the right choice is the hardest one." As they rode back to the ranch, a gunshot echoed across the valley. They urged their horses forward, cresting a hill to see Preston and his associates shooting at bottles they'd arranged on a fence. "Impressive, isn't it?" Preston called as they approached. "Just got this new Colt from back east, latest model." "Bit loud for target practice so close to where the cattle graze," Forrest commented. "They'll spook easily with the drought making them nervous." Preston's smile tightened. "I'll shoot where I please on my future property, Cowboy." "It's not your property yet," Kathleen said sharply. Preston turned to her, surprise flickering across his face at her defiance. "Soon enough, my dear, soon enough." He holstered his gun. "Speaking of which, I've made arrangements for us to leave for Boston the day after the wedding, non-negotiable this time. My business partners are expecting us. Preston, I've told you your father's condition isn't critical. He has servants and your mother to care for him." His tone hardened. "A wife's primary duty is to her husband, Kathleen. It's time you understood that." Forrest stepped forward. "Miss Sinclair knows her duties better than most, Mr. Winthrop, to her family and this land. Stay out of this, Irwin." Preston's hand moved toward his holstered gun. "You're overstepping your bounds as an employee." "Stop it, both of you," Kathleen intervened. "Preston, we'll discuss this later." With a final warning glance at Forrest, Preston returned to his companions. As they rode away, Kathleen felt a growing dread in the pit of her stomach. "He's dangerous," Forrest said quietly. "He's desperate," Kathleen corrected. "The railroad deal he's arranged depends on this marriage. Without my family's land as part of the package, the investors might back out." Forrest's eyes widened slightly. "So that's his game." "He's promising them a direct route through Sinclair property. A route that would cut our ranch in half and ruin the grazing lands." Kathleen's hands tightened on the reins. "My father would never agree to it, but Preston thinks once we're married, he can convince me to persuade father." "And would you?" She met his gaze steadily. "Never." That evening, Kathleen found her father sitting on the porch watching the sunset. James Sinclair was a shadow of his former robust self, his illness having carved away at his once strong frame, but his eyes remained sharp as ever. "You're troubled, Katie," he said, using the childhood nickname no one else dared use. She sat beside him, taking his weathered hand in hers. "I don't want to marry Preston, father," he sighed heavily. "I know, child." The simple acknowledgement brought tears to her eyes. "Then why are you letting this happen?" "Because I'm a selfish old man who wants to save his legacy." He gestured to the land stretching before them. 3 generations of Sinclairs have worked this earth, the thought of losing it to the bank." He shook his head. "But perhaps the price is too high." "What do you mean?" I mean, he said slowly, that no piece of land is worth my daughter's happiness. He squeezed her hand. I've seen how Preston speaks to you, and I've seen how you look at our new foreman. Kathleen blushed. Father, Forrest Irwin is a good man. I did my research before hiring him. His family's ranch in Colorado was taken by railroad men using underhanded tactics. He looked at her knowingly. Sound familiar? You think Preston is planning the same thing here? I know he is. Her father's voice hardened. I may be sick, Kathleen, but I'm not a fool. Preston wants our land for the railroad, not for ranching. Then why agree to the marriage? To buy time. He smiled wearily. Forrest came to me yesterday with an idea. A way to save the ranch without selling you into an unhappy marriage. Kathleen's heart leapt. What idea? He's located a buyer for our cattle a better price than we've been offered before, and he knows of water sources on the north section that we haven't tapped. With those combined, we might just make it through until the next season. Hope, fragile and dangerous, bloomed in Kathleen's chest. Is it enough? It's a gamble, her father admitted, but less of one than trusting Preston Winthrop with your future. The next day, tensions mounted as wedding preparations continued. Preston brought a minister from the city, insisting the ceremony be moved up by a day. Kathleen felt the noose tightening around her neck as servants decorated the ranch house with flowers brought by train from Dallas. She sought out Forrest in the stables, finding him preparing to ride out. Is it true? She asked without preamble. Do you have a plan to save the ranch? He straightened, wiping his hands on a rag. Your father told you. Yes, but I need to hear it from you. Is it possible? Forrest stepped closer. Possible, yes. Certain, no. The cattle buyer I found in Fort Worth will pay premium prices, but we need to get the herd there within a week, and the water source I found needs equipment to access properly. What about the bank loan? With the cattle sale, we could pay off half. I'm hoping they'll extend terms on the rest once they see the water situation improving. Kathleen paced the stable. Preston will be furious when he finds out. Let him be, Forrest said firmly. This isn't about him. It's about saving your family's legacy the right way. She stopped, turning to face him. And what about us, Forrest? Is there an us in this plan of yours? The question hung between them, raw and honest. Forrest stepped forward, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. I didn't come here looking for love, Kathleen. I came looking for work. His eyes held hers. But from the moment I saw you standing up to that man, I knew you were someone special, someone worth fighting for. Even though we barely know each other, I know enough, he said softly. I know you love this land like it's part of your soul. I know you'd sacrifice yourself to save your family. And I know that when you smile, really smile, it lights up everything around you. Kathleen's heart hammered in her chest. What are you saying, Forrest? I'm saying that if we manage to save this ranch, if you find yourself free of Preston Winthrop, I'd like the chance to court you properly. To see if what I feel for you might grow into something lasting. Before she could respond, a cold voice cut through the moment. How touching. They turned to see Preston standing in the stable doorway, his face twisted with rage. Behind him stood two of his associates, their hands resting on their holstered guns. Preston, Kathleen began, but he cut her off with a sharp gesture. Save your explanations. I heard everything. His eyes narrowed. Did you really think I wouldn't discover your little scheme, the cattle sale, the water rights? He laughed bitterly. I have men watching Fort Worth. Your buyer mysteriously withdrew his offer this morning. Forrest moved slightly, positioning himself between Kathleen and Preston. There are other buyers. Not within 100 miles, I've seen to that. Preston pulled out a folded document from his coat. And this morning, I purchased the bank note on the Sinclair ranch. Your debt is now owed directly to me. Kathleen felt the blood drain from her face. You can't do that. I already have. Preston's smile was cold. The wedding proceeds as planned tomorrow. Afterward, this ranch becomes part of my holdings. If you refuse, I call in the debt immediately and your family loses everything. Forrest stepped forward, but Preston's men drew their guns. I wouldn't, Cowboy, not unless you want the lady to watch you die. "This isn't over, Winthrop," Forrest said, his voice deadly calm. "For you, it is." Preston gestured to his men. "Escort Mr. Irwin off the property. If he returns, shoot him as a trespasser." "Preston, no," Kathleen protested. "Save your breath, my dear." Preston grabbed her arm roughly. "You have a wedding to prepare for. And I suggest you embrace your role with enthusiasm, or your father might find his medical care suddenly inadequate." That night, Kathleen sat in her bedroom, despair washing over her in waves. The ranch hands reported that Forrest had been forced at gunpoint to pack his meager belongings and leave. Her father, upon hearing the news about the banknote, had suffered another heart episode and was now confined to bed. A soft knock at her window startled her. Drawing back the curtain, she gasped at the sight of Forrest's face. She quickly opened the window. "Forrest, they'll kill you if they find you here. I couldn't leave without seeing you." He was perched precariously on the trellis outside her room. "Winthrop's men are watching the main house, but they're not as observant as they should be." "It's over," she whispered, fighting tears. "He owns the debt now. There's no way out." "There's always a way out, Kathleen. Do you trust me?" She nodded without hesitation. "Meet me at the old Carson mining cabin at dawn. Bring only what you can carry easily. I can't leave my parents to face Preston's wrath. Your father knows the plan. He's the one who suggested it." Forrest reached through the window, his hand gently touching her cheek. "I promised him I'd keep you safe. Will you let me?" In that moment, looking into his eyes, Kathleen made her decision. Yes. Before dawn, Kathleen slipped from the house, a small satchel containing her most precious belongings in hand. She left a letter for her mother, explaining everything, and crept through the shadows to the stables. Her horse, a reliable bay mare named Pepper, nickered softly as Kathleen saddled her. With a final glance at the ranch house, she mounted and rode into the pre-dawn darkness. The old Carson mining cabin lay 3 miles north of the ranch, nestled in a hidden valley. As she approached, Kathleen saw a lantern's glow from within. Dismounting, she approached cautiously. Forrest. The door opened, revealing not just Forrest but also Sheriff Daniel Matthews and a well-dressed stranger. "Kathleen, this is Judge Harold Wilson from the Territorial Court," Forrest introduced. "And you know Sheriff Matthews." She entered the cabin, confusion evident on her face. "What's going on?" "Justice, Miss Sinclair," the judge said. "Mr. Irwin has presented evidence of serious fraud and coercion regarding Mr. Winthrop's business dealings." Sheriff Matthews stepped forward. "Preston Winthrop is wanted in Colorado for similar schemes. Using threats and manipulation to acquire land for the railroad, then selling it at inflated prices. The acquisition of your family's banknote was illegal," the judge continued. "He falsified documents and bribed bank officials. I've issued an order freezing all transactions until a full investigation can be conducted." Hope surged within Kathleen. "So the wedding won't be happening," Forrest said, a smile breaking across his face. "Not to him, at least." "My deputies are arresting Winthrop as we speak," the sheriff added. "Along with his associates." Kathleen sank into a chair, overwhelmed. "How did you manage all this overnight?" "I didn't," Forrest admitted. "I've been gathering evidence on Winthrop for months. That's partly why I came to work at your ranch. I heard rumors he was targeting it next." "You were investigating him all this time?" "Initially, yes. But then I met you and everything changed." He knelt before her chair. "Bringing Winthrop to justice became about more than revenge for my family's ranch. It became about protecting you and your future." The judge cleared his throat. "If you'll excuse us, I believe Mr. Irwin has more to discuss with you privately. Sheriff, shall we check on those deputies?" After they left, silence filled the cabin. Forrest remained kneeling before Kathleen, his expression earnest. "I know this is sudden," he said. "And I know we haven't known each other long, but I meant what I said yesterday. I want the chance to court you properly, to build something real between us." Kathleen reached out, her hands framing his face. "You saved everything I love, my family, our ranch, my future." "I helped," he corrected, "but it was your courage that inspired me." The way you stood up to Winthrop, even knowing what it might cost you." His hands covered hers. "I've never met anyone braver. Brave enough for you," she whispered, echoing his words from their first meeting, "more than enough." He leaned forward, hesitating just before his lips met hers. "May I?" Her answer was to close the distance between them, sealing their future with a kiss as the first rays of sunlight streamed through the cabin window, illuminating the beginning of their story together. 1 year later, the Sinclair Ranch celebrated its most prosperous season in a decade. The water sources Forrest had discovered provided relief during the drought, and the cattle herd had grown stronger under his expert management. Kathleen stood on the porch of the ranch house, watching as Forrest rode in from the northern pasture. Her heart still skipped when she saw him, now her husband of 8 months. Their wedding had been simple but joyful, attended by the entire community that had rallied around them after Preston Winthrop's schemes were exposed. Preston himself was serving time in a territorial prison, his railroad connections unable to save him from justice. The investigation had revealed corruption that stretched far beyond Redemption Creek, leading to reforms that protected small ranchers throughout the territory. Forrest dismounted, removing his hat as he approached. Dust covered his clothes and his face bore the healthy tan of a man who worked outdoors, but his smile was bright as he climbed the steps to greet her. "How are you feeling today?" he asked, his hand gently touching her slightly rounded belly. "Better. The morning sickness seems to be passing." She covered his hand with hers. "Your son or daughter has been quite active today." His eyes lit with wonder at the mention of their child due to arrive in the winter. "Your father thinks it's a boy, says the Sinclair line needs a strong heir." "My father says a lot of things," she laughed. "His health has improved so much since last year he thinks he knows everything again." "He knows enough to have hired me," Forrest said, pulling her close. "Smartest decision he ever made, according to him." "Second smartest," she corrected. "The smartest was letting me marry you instead of Preston." They stood together, watching as the sun began its descent over the land they both loved, the land they would someday pass to their children. "Are you happy, Kathleen?" Forrest asked softly. She turned in his arms, looking up at the man who had recognized her courage when others saw only weakness, who had fought for her freedom to choose her own path. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," she answered truthfully. "You gave me the greatest gift, Forrest." "What's that?" "A love brave enough to match my own." As the setting sun cast long shadows across the ranch, Kathleen and Forrest Irwin embraced their future together, a future built on courage, respect, and a love born in the untamed heart of the West.